Today we're talking about being hurt by God. You could be hurt by God, the church leaders. You could be hurt from not having your prayers answered. Ultimately, I think everyone associates this back to God, and so that's what we're uncovering and discussing today. Hi, I'm Sherry Hemstreet of thesherryhemstreet.com, and I share my understanding of God in a way that most people don't view it, and my journey with him through my personal relationship with him and what he shares with me. So today I want to talk about obviously being hurt by God, because I won't forget the feeling of being hurt by God. Like, I have been hurt by God, and it was devastating. It ran so deep for me. I was collapsed over it. I never knew that it was possible for God to hurt anyone, and it just seemed so counterintuitive and crazy to me until I experienced it. And transparently, it changed me in that moment. It really shook me. And when it happened, at first I did the regular things like trying more prayer, more time with God and in church. And it's kind of crazy. I look back at that now and I'm like, more time with God. Like, I have been spending my time sitting with God and just having communications with God for the better part of my life now. But obviously this was a different time, and it was a time when I was not where I am today, right? Like, there's no other way to say this, but I did all the things that, like, you would expect to do. I did more tithing. I did more, doing of what God says to do. I followed my Bible more closely, went to church more. I turned myself inside out. And eventually, I let it all go. Like, I had to. I walked away for myself. I let go of God, a God that I had known so intimately, so truly my entire life. I never imagined that he could let me down. I was so heartbroken, distraught, and I was like, how is this even possible? This was a God who had given me everything, who had taught me things, who had shown me a life that was completely magical and joyful and ecstatic, and everything that I ever imagined life could be. And then to be let down, and I felt broken. I felt so broken, and being broken in that space, I felt cut off from him. Like, my blessings had stopped. Like, nothing was going right in my life. Like, how could he do this to me? Didn't he love me? I didn't understand it. I was distraught, lost, and I had to pick myself up and dust myself off and keep going. And every bit of that journey changed me. Now, it doesn't make sense that a loving God would cause harm, pain, or hurt. But there are more and more people who are leaving the church, especially today, putting down their Bibles, letting go of their relationship with God that they had because they feel hurt. Not just any hurt. Not even the kind of hurt that just happens one time. The kind of hurt that runs so deep that it creates a void of pain, suffering, deep change within a person. It changes who they are from who they were. And that change is undeniable. They go from someone who loved God, the church, perhaps even their religion, someone who was devoted and dedicated, and it was part of their identity. All of it held so much meaning for them. Gave them a safe space that was supported and supportive. And it left them feeling better. The connection of having a relationship with God, a church, a space to call home with a community of people around you, and even a book to turn to when you need more, someone to lean on for strength when life gets too heavy, and it does. To go from that to having a void that was once filled and now echoes of emptiness, loneliness, and disconnection in a way that was never imagined, in a way that was never thought possible. It was never anticipated, never expected, and that made it hurt so much more. Many times, people in the church are hurt by God, but even more than that, they're hurt by people who say they are acting in God's name. And because of the belief and trust that we placed in those people, we believe that we are hurt by God. Because indeed, if these people are acting in God's name, then it's God's truth. And it's God's will. And that can hurt when it's used as a weapon or with ill intention or so many other ways. This happens in churches, religions, and even in many forms of leadership in the church, unfortunately. Like, we've all heard of this experience, we've all experienced it, or we know someone who has, or we're online and we see it. And it's just another way of being hurt. Hurt by God, hurt by religion. And there's more experiences than that. Like, it's not just those two. There's the shame of living life and violating one of his rules or terms. And internally, it's often that people feel it's out of their choice. And the rule that makes them wrong, God's law, or something they were made to believe is that God's rule, it makes them wrong. And that causes deep internal shame. Shame that is often more damaging than people understand. Because nobody wants to go against a God. Nobody wants to go against a God when they feel like they had no choice. Or even if it doesn't make sense to them, right? And that changes a person's self-perception. And unfortunately, self-perception then becomes clouded with a lack of value. And we judge ourselves for not doing what God said or wished. And, we're our own worst critics, not God, but no one's ever told us that. In fact, they've told us the opposite. They've told us that we're going to hell because of this, that we're going to face eternal damnation because of this. So much fear. And there's so many experiences that create this pain. That's the result of many things like divorce, doubt, sin, sexuality, and pleasure. Like, these are just a few of the things that I know have caused people so much internal strife and pain and hurt and shame and guilt. All of it. So many of these things are wrapped up in rules and dogma that you may have noticed it's practically impossible to live by. Impossible to live by. And then the church leaders are like, but you must follow these rules. You must follow these rules. If not, you're not a good person. And so we're constantly repenting. We're doing all the things. I mean, let's be real here. We cannot help it if someone divorces us. And likewise, it's not healthy and safe. Like, no one should stay in an unhealthy or toxic marriage or one that doesn't bring them ultimate joy just to be in right standing with God. Like, sacrificing your life so you'll be in right standing with God it was never his intention. And we're not going to get caught up on the God or the universe. Like, we're not getting caught up on all that, right? But it was never his intention. Suffering at the hands with someone so that we can be in right standing with God, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually from another, is never what God wanted for us. Otherwise, it would say so in the Bible. Some of these things have just become so archaic that they are ignored now. For instance, a majority of brides these days are less than likely to be virgins. Like, it's okay to ignore that one, but it's not okay to ignore the divorce one. Like, we cannot pick and choose. And from these very things, right, there's so much pain caused. Very few people expect that. And that's just something outside of modern society, that we expect a bride who is wearing white, that she must be a virgin, and no one's checking. No one cares. right? The only person who should care is her. Her. Right? That's up to her. And yet there are so many people, so many of whom are women, who carry guilt and shame over such things, even having internal conflict, even over conflict about enjoying intimacy with someone who loves them and they love. Right? And it goes even beyond that. The unanswered prayer has caused pain, immense pain, right? This is another one that I see talked about, and it's talked about openly and commonly, and it's a tough one. It can feel like God is ignoring you. You feel cut off, disconnected, separated from God. Even worse, it can feel like He's ignoring you and doesn't care about you or your needs. And it's hard to want a God who doesn't want you. And that's the big problem there. There aren't many other ways to see it. It hurts. It hurts to ask for something and ask repeatedly, begging, pleading with all you have for your prayer to be returned answered, and yet you come up empty-handed. And you've been told it would be so easy for Creator to just let it happen for you. And yet, nobody can tell you why it hasn't. And this is one that so many experience, sometimes even repeatedly, until they just can take no more and call the whole thing quits. And I don't blame them. The way God has been presented is insane. It's extraordinary. Like, I can't even, it's come to a point where I understand why people are leaving the church, religion, the Bible, God, the whole system. Many think that God hates them and forgot about them because of their particular circumstance. And that's another kind of hurt that is hard. And it's hard to move on from or reconcile. And all of these things can destroy our self-worth, because, like, if God made us and He doesn't love us, who will? And how do we love ourselves? And where do we get our self-respect from then? And how can we have any self-worth if we aren't even worthy of our Creator helping us, or if He thought so little of us that we have these circumstances? And why do others not have to endure such things? You know, if you believe in God and if you adhere to God, or if you have a relationship with God, you go to church, you do the things, you're supposed to be the righteous, you're supposed to be His people. But you look around and you're like, well, sure doesn't feel like it. There's so many things. Unfortunately, the church, religion, leaders, they're all human, right? It's not an excuse, but it is the truth. Like, all of these pains didn't actually come from God. They came from human. And whether that human was the game of telephone that has been passed down since 4 AD or 100 AD, whatever it was, right? Or whether it's the Bible that has been passed down and rewritten 50,000 different times. Don't get me started on that. Or church leaders, or people who have used God's name for their own means and outcomes, right? So, up until now, we have left most of our relationship with God up to those leaders, the church and religion, to provide answers and the path and the journey. And when we're hurt, it's rare that those exact people have an answer for it. So fascinating. It's typically something that's just attributed to God, blamed on God. And even in our doing that, we cause ourselves even more pain rather than removing the pain we hope to remove by disconnecting, by turning our backs, by going our own way. Being hurt by God looks different for everyone, but the pain is the same. It runs deep. And to think that someone who created you and loved you could hurt you so much and so deeply, yet many feel this way. It's common for people to turn from God and even the church. And everyone has their breaking point, a point when they feel the relationship is so damaged that they can't turn back. And in most cases, it's not that they don't want God. It's that they don't want a God that has hurt them so deeply. It's hard to want a God that you think doesn't want you. And that hurts even more. And that's an even deeper truth of what pushes people to let their religion go, to let go of their relationship with God, to turn their backs and move on. And I know how hard this can be and how deeply it hurts, because I've been there. And it's different for everyone. And eventually you break and the pain is too much. The disappointment is too great. It can even feel kind of foolish to think you trusted a God that you couldn't even see. Or in my case, even one I had seen and spoken with. Like, yeah, I went all the way down from one end of the spectrum to the other, from seeing God to being like, no, like I'm done. This isn't it. I share this with you so you will give yourself grace for your own experience. It's easy to understand why a person has felt like they had to turn their back on God after being hurt. And if nobody told you that, I want to be the one to say that to you. You did what was best for you at the time, and there's no punishment for that. And I hope that you would give yourself grace and understanding and compassion and love. Because being hurt by God or those representing God is a terrible thing, truly. It truly is. And here's what I learned. That pain, no matter how it happened, and I experienced it in just about every way one could experience it. What I learned wasn't helping me, right? Like, in fact, it was hurting me more than I knew. The pain that I was carrying wasn't helping me. It was hurting me more than I realized, because if I let it become a part of who I was and it changed me, it didn't change me for the better. And I had to sit with it, and I had to sit with God. And the last thing I wanted to do was get beyond it. But I did. And here's what I learned from sitting with God and letting go of my own pain. I learned that people are human and they operate on their own will and motives. And sometimes when we have such different lives and experiences than others, we can't even comprehend how someone could be that way. That's simply the human experience in a nutshell. But here's what I learned even beyond that. I had to ask myself, who did I believe God was? Who did I think God was? You see, I knew who they thought he was, and I knew who they taught me he was. I even knew what they printed and said in the Bible about him. But what I didn't know was how true that was. I didn't know if that was exactly what he meant when he shared those things with St. Paul or the apostles or even Moses. You see, I wasn't there. You can probably relate to that. I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what he meant when he said things to Moses or Jacob or Abraham. I didn't understand the context when he told Sarah she would have a child when she was over 100 years old. And the thing that no one has said about it all is some people have taken an entirely different approach to this. Some people have said that the Bible is allegory, a bunch of stories that we're meant to use and apply to life, fables, mythical stories. Others said they were meant to be taken metaphorically. That sounded exhausting to me. And still others said different things. And of course, we can't forget the people who said it is exactly literal and Jesus will return and there will be a beast with a number tattooed on its head and its breath will be fire and it'll have 6 heads or something. I don't know. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me, so I didn't really latch on to it. I don't know about you. What I do know, though, was if God is real, then I could have a relationship with him. Or at the very least, I could ask him about all of this. Because while there are a whole lot of people out there who claim to know what they call facts, like this is exactly what Jesus meant, and this is exactly what he stated, and here's why, because in that time this word means this definition, and when we trace it back through Aramaic and Hebrew and Greek, and like, oh my goodness, like how theological and historical can we get, right? I mean, look, all of that is well and good, and it holds some meaning to a point. But why trouble myself to sit and figure it all out when I could just ask God? I mean, that sounds like it couldn't be harder than becoming a historical, theological, liturgical expert, theologian that read and wrote Hebrew and studied every word and concept from 2,000 years ago in some weird game that we believe is historically, contextually true, but I have to decipher everything. How boring. How boring. I mean, I don't really care how smart we are. I know that we use words just 2 centuries ago that hold entirely different meanings now. And the more casual usage had different meanings in some cases. And depending on the mode of the time and era, there are so many nuances that we actually can never be certain about it until a time machine is built. I mean, and then we can go back and check it out. And even then, how long is it going to take to build that time machine? I mean, I don't even know. I was more than willing to take my chances with asking God. It couldn't have taken any longer than everything else that was an option. And so I did. And there's so much I learned that obviously I can't share it all here, but I want to share a few things because I think these things are different enough that they either resonate in you or you've questioned them, or they will help you to see that there is more to God than what you've been told, than what you've been shown. The first one is God is love. Love doesn't judge or condemn. That's a behavior of man. God made sex to be pleasurable between people. For sex to be pleasurable between people, it must be, it's concerning I have to say this, but it's obvious. It's got to be people. They have to be people to feel pleasure. And they have to be people who can relate and accept that as a form of pleasure. Let me spell this out for those who cannot read between the lines. That excludes animals and children. I'm mortified that I have to say that, but that's number 2. Children don't relate to pleasure. If they did, they would guide it and have innate knowledge of it. They don't. It's so simple. Animals, I know. Okay, animals are not people, and they only copulate to reproduce. Like, God bless them. God answers all prayers with yes. That's my third thing. God answers all prayers with yes. And in fact, they've already been answered even before you ask. But you have to understand your part in that prayer. And you have to understand the dynamic of prayer in relationship to God. But all of it is yes. You, number 4, you are well equipped to have all of your prayers answered. You have the power to have the circumstances which you pray for. Number 5, God has not turned his back on us, and we are not disconnected or separate from him. That is our way of thinking and perceiving. And though it seems real, it is part of the illusion that we are subscribing to. We can subscribe to something, but that doesn't make it real. I know. And number 6, for anything that isn't answered here, there must be a higher understanding of God and how he works and the universe to have that answered personally. Here's the biggest part of what God revealed to me. He said, the Bible does work and the truth is always there. There isn't the problem. That isn't the problem. The problem is we are no longer at the consciousness that we were 2,000 years ago. Have you ever had the experience of not understanding something and then one day it clicked and you got it? The moment of knowing something without understanding it is very similar to understanding and the Bible, God, and even religion, all of that. Right? Like you hear something, you see something, and you don't really get it. And then one day you're just going about your day, going about your life, and all of a sudden you're like, that's it. Now I get it. Now I understand. That's what I've been through. You see, the mind and its understanding of 2,000 years ago was limited. And you can see from the actions and behaviors of how the Bible was understood and upheld, it was a dynamic of fear. And the energy that fear seeks is power through containment, because that is safety and security. So what happened? Leaders took over the power and contained people, and they made the rules and instilled the fear. So when there is fear, people like others to be in control and to bear the risk. And there's always someone willing to be in control and bear the risk if they stand to receive great reward. And that's pretty much what the early part of the religion and church looked like. Not much has changed, unfortunately. People want someone greater than them to have power. And that was God. They wanted God to have more power than them. And they thought they were unworthy to hear from God, so there were these people between them and God. They liked the containment. They liked being in a contained space. It felt safe. Those were the rules. That's the rules. Rules keep people safe. And when they can't sort it out themselves, it gives people a way to organize and grow through the experience. The problem is, they didn't continue growing through the experience. They just dug in and stayed and created a rigid experience. This means there had to be control, and there was plenty of it, and people willingly gave it over to the church and the Bible and even God. But that was never actually the purpose, and that was never God's intention. God has always been available for communion, relationship, and the revelation of truth. God hasn't changed. What did change was our needs and our way of thinking about God, the Bible, and religion. And we call it like modern. We're more modern now, or but that's not it. It's not that we're more modern, it's that we have evolved out of it. So it looks like there's this great exodus of people leaving religion for one reason or another. But what people are really searching for is the God they know in their heart and soul that isn't available to them anywhere. That's not being illustrated anywhere for them. That's not being shown to them. That no one is saying, hey, here, this is what you have wanted and needed and you've been looking for and you've known in your heart is true. A God who aligns with what they know to be true. And that God is loving and there is no fear. And a lot of the things that I learned in Sunday school or the church, they simply weren't it. They weren't true. These people have resorted to holding God in their heart and their heart alone because there is nowhere for them to find what they've been looking for. But it's time. It's time for them to have that community and unity. It's time for them to come together and have a voice and a space. It's time for them to be recognized. The truth is, the old church is crumbling and religion as we know it is changing. And it needs to. It's out of a need. It's not because it's no longer relevant. It's because it is so relevant and we do want it. We know that there is a loving God and it's time to nurture and experience that relationship. The God, church, or person who hurt you was a God that has been understood the same way for 2,000 years. And that God has been portrayed to be angry, vengeful, tyrannical. That's not a true God. That's not a loving God. That's a God of a lower way of thinking. That is a God of a lower consciousness. That is a God of fear. The God of limited consciousness. The God of 2,000 years ago when fear was the residing frequency and feeling of humanity and the planet. When survival was a daily feat. You woke up every day and your goal was to survive the day, to live. We have progressed as humanity, and while God hasn't changed, we have. And how we interpret and receive his message, yeah, it's time for something new. And that is what the church missed. That's what the leaders missed. That God hasn't changed, but the way we receive the message has changed. They haven't kept up with the times. They haven't grown in God. They've only grown in theory, in theology. They've only grown in text and knowledge and not even wisdom. They've only grown in book smarts. There's no relationship there. Like Moses had a relationship. There's none of that, unfortunately. And that's what leaders have been missing. And they meant no harm. They truly thought they were upholding truth when they were really enforcing and reiterating a message that has long been outgrown by the people who needed to hear it. The church didn't grow, and it wouldn't let people grow because then you would be you'd be a heretic. Right? Nobody wants to be a heretic. You'd be excommunicated. You'd be pushed out of the church. You'd be hurt from the only community you knew. 2,000 years ago, the message you hear from the church is all they were able to receive, understand, and hear. It suited them. 2,000 years later, we are more evolved more knowing, more conscious. There is more to the message, more to the Bible, and more to God than you have been shown, and it's a better message than the one you heard. It's one that more aligns with truth and what you know to be true in your heart. And when you hear this, when you take in this new message and understanding, when this new perspective becomes available to you, it's easy to release the pain and unforgiveness that may have been holding your heart captive. It's easy to release the hurt that you might have been carrying around. And when you let that go, you can have what's next. Or you can experience what's next, and that will allow you to release it. It's easy to get to know and understand the truth of the God you once loved and leaned on, just through the simple act of forgiveness, of releasing the hurt, of understanding, and having a perspective, of being able to see what happened with clear eyes. And this is exactly what is happening all over. All over the world, this is happening in small pockets and small places. And I'm sharing this in my community. This is exactly what we're talking about. This is what I'm teaching about. This is what I'm bringing forth. I'm sharing the messages from God and the revelation that I have seen and been given, and my experiences and my awakenings over the past few years with Him. And this is all happening in my community, in the sanctuary with Sherry. And if you want to learn more about this, if you want to understand this, if you feel called to this, if this pinged something in your energy, it moved something in you, it resonated, just let me know that you want to join. You can just drop sanctuary below and we will get you access. But more than anything, I want you to know that God didn't hurt you. It was the misinterpretation of people who led you to believe how things should happen, and they were the only ones that could communicate with God. You can have a communication with God. You can have a relationship with God. You can get answers from God. You can have everything you want with your God, just like you thought and dreamed and wished and hoped that you could one day. And so I urge you to get that feeling back and to follow that. And I hope to see you in my community. Remember, you are loved and you are loved. This is Sherry Hemstreet, thesherryhemstreet.com. So grateful for you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this with me.